I'm Aaron.
And I'm Sean Patrick.
And I'm Ryan.
And we don't talk politics.
Welcome to Hollywood. What's your dream? Welcome to Hollywood. When I was a kid, we had to watch that stupid show constantly. It was my dad's fiance's favorite movie. Oh, well, good morning and happy Monday, Aaron Forney.
Don't tell you the day. You're gonna let them know we're off our schedule. We're supposed to record on Saturdays.
Well, I guess
Sunday.
It's still gonna
It's
come
2
out
days
at the
late.
proper time.
We're really off our game this week.
Proper ting.
So, we're going to talk about things.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a really cool thing, actually. So, Aaron talked to me about a week and a half ago now. Like just a little bit after we released the inaugural podcast. He's like, hey, what you know about Slenderman? I was like, well, I know all sorts of stuff. And you didn't know anything about Slenderman. Now you're more of an expert than I am, to be honest with you.
I knew small, certain details of Slenderman. Not much. Not very much at all.
For the uninitiated, what describes Slenderman?
All right.
What does he look like?
Slenderman is an entity.
He is the entity.
What they describe him as, what they say he looks like, he's about 7 or 8 feet tall. He has elongated arms, which usually hang down to about his knees. He's got long, bony fingers. Occasionally there's depictions of him with tendrils that come out of his back.
And he's wearing a black suit, white shirt and black tie, very like G-Man look.
Mm-hmm.
He's extraordinarily Lovecraftian.
Yeah. Think Men in Black or Agent Smith in The Matrix. Mm-hmm. Or any of the agents for that matter. But, yeah, and he's super tall, super skinny. One might even say slender. He has an all-white head and a face void of any distinguishing facial features.
He's genuinely terrifying. I remember the first time I heard of Slenderman was watching just regular YouTube videos. Like I have a group of friends who are into just jumping online and looking at weird crap, and they got me into this series of like 55-minute episodes of this group of kids having to like combat like Slenderman showing up and having to combat him and stuff. I was like, wow, this is a really cool concept. And then I did some digging as well. And found out that he was created online. He's like the what I would think would be the first internet created villain / monster thing, like Loch Ness, that sort of thing. Aaron did a bunch of research into like basically the origin. So Slenderman first showed up in 2009. So he's been around for an extraordinarily long period of time. And the internet was still fairly new in 2009 as far as I'm considering it. In something called the Something Awful contest, where somebody needed to take a normal picture and make it paranormal. So this guy whose pen name was Victor Surge came up with this with Slenderman. He said he was inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, because that's like almost like the tendrils that come out of the guy's back on command. They're very Cthulhu-esque, genuinely terrifying. And there's a lot of mist, and people encounter him in the woods. Like if you just go on YouTube and you just type in Slenderman, you will find a billion zillion different videos of all different makes and qualities and sort of things. You'll even find an interesting documentary or two that we'll be talking about later. They started in Creepypasta, and that was something that Aaron had mentioned before. That I'd heard of copypasta and Creepypasta before, but I didn't know what it meant. It's just a really bad dish. But until Aaron actually said something here. So, what exactly is copypasta for you?
Well, according to Urban Dictionary, it's essentially internet horror stories or a myth passed around other sites to frighten readers and viewers. The word creepypasta comes from the term copypasta. It's an internet slang term for a block of text that gets copied and pasted from website to website. Creepypastas are supplemented with pictures, audio, or video footage related to the story, typically with gory, distorted, or otherwise shocking content. So basically, it's your...
Yeah, so it's like just really messed up stuff that people just copy paste onto
Right, it's
Reddit.
Basically, most of your internet horror can be defined as creepypasta. But yeah, it's as a story that grows online. It gains its notoriety online. People copy it, paste it, share it. And Slenderman is one of those things. He just started out as something that was, like Sean Patrick was saying, was a part of a contest. And he, Eric Knudsen, Victor Surge, edited this photo. There's 2 photos, and you'll see this picture of these kids running, and he's just there in the background, just kind of creepily hanging out there. But he had no backstory. There was just the pictures that were edited, and kind of a bunch of creepypasta was made off of those pictures. Which that's how the story of Slenderman came about and grew.
And grew and grew and grew and grew, and it kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. For the sake of the podcast, all feelings aside about this Slenderman character, we're going to talk about him as if he were real, because there's a lot of people out there that actually believe in Slenderman. What was the name of that documentary that you had me watch?
Beware the Slenderman.
Beware the Slenderman. That messed me up. I remember seeing what happened on television, but I mean, essentially 2 girls, they were both 12, had a friend over for like 12 or 13, and they ended up taking the girl out to the woods and like almost nearly killing her. Like they stabbed her like 19 times. And when they were finally found, they admitted that they did it basically as a sacrifice to Slenderman, because they wanted to be his friend, I suppose. What was it? They wanted to be his proxy. So,
Proxy.
Can you talk more about, like, because like I said, you're 10 times more educated on this subject matter than I am, but can you talk about like the mythos that has been, and I think like a lot of people know who Slenderman is, but I don't think people know the amount of mythology that has been created behind this idea and how serious people actually take it.
Right. Like it's like Sean Patrick was saying about having proxies. The girls were hoping to become proxies or servants of Slenderman, which is a thing.
Just bonkers.
They believed once they became proxies or servants, they would be able to live in Slender Mansion, the Slenderman's mansion, which was supposedly in the middle of
a national park.
Yeah, Nicollet National Park in Wisconsin. It's a 1.5 million acre national park. And after they did the stabbing, that's where they were planning on heading. They started walking, and that's when they got picked up by the police or whatever. But as far as he's just been, like I said, it's just been grown off creepypasta and stories that have evolved from it. Originally, he was portrayed as violent. He would abduct children and presumably kill them. Later, he gained a more passive-aggressive demeanor. Instead of killing his victims, he would mentally abuse his victims and drive them to madness, which you'll see in if you look into the Slenderman video games or movies or anything. It's more the madness aspect of him than the killing and the violent acts.
When I came across him, it was the madness thing. He was driving one particular young man and a group of friends insane, by like constantly showing up and interfering in this kid's life, essentially.
Right. It's just, and I mean, that's kind of what happened to those girls a little bit. Mind you, one of them did have schizophrenia, and that was part of what led her to believe that he was real, and we'll get into that later, because there's another section about how he's been brought into existence, how some people believe he's been brought into existence. But so there's a lot of YouTube videos, as Sean Patrick mentioned, and most of them, and included like in the footage shown in Beware the Slenderman. By the way, Beware the Slenderman it's an HBO documentary that was about the two girls that tried to kill the classmate. But it also goes in depth into who Slenderman is, where he originated from, and everything. But unlike YouTube, it'll show all the videos they have. It's usually there's an electronic disturbance before you see him. There's and a lot of times it's when people are filming themselves or
walking around in the woods, and then you'll see it's the classic something scary is about to happen now, because you'll see the video screen stutter, and then
a little static and a little stutter.
Shows up way far in the distance behind a tree or something, or he turns the camera and there he is.
Right.
But he like legitimately, they portray Slenderman in everything. He is in I did a little bit of research on like him showing up in like pop culture and stuff. He shows up in cartoons all the time. Illustrators put him into cartoons. He showed up in there's a kid show, I believe it's on Cartoon Network, called Gumball. Just very whimsical kid show. But there's one particular episode where the dad is riding his bicycle past a clothing store, and there are these plain mannequins in the clothing store, and there are two Slendermen on display, and then he drives rides his bike past them, and they change into like a normal mannequin, and like it's very deliberate that it's there, and if you didn't know about it, it's just super creepy that like so many people have watched it. A very, very popular show and a very popular episode, and it's there. One other incident that really I thought was kind of funny and kind of leads to how Slenderman, kind of the effect that we'll talk about in a little bit, happened in a My Little Pony episode where basically Slenderman showed up as a My Little Pony version of Slenderman was in a My Little Pony episode recently, just a couple years ago, I guess. And the the illustrator slipped him in. Nobody noticed him at first. Then people started noticing him. The illustrator had no authorization to do that and ended up losing his job over putting Slenderman into an episode of My Little Pony. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Him itself is all over the place. But having something that started as just a regular photo and kind of grow legs and like really take off on its own merit of being a terrifying thing was pretty startling. But then doing it to the point of having people take it extremely seriously, like there is a dogma to this fellow now, and that's just wild that people are actually really digging it to the point that they're doing things about it. And there's entire groups out there that are devoted to this guy, to a borderline cult ideal, which is pretty crazy.
So the real reason I wanted to do this episode in particular is because It was something that I'm afraid of, we'll say. I don't know if I'm really afraid of it, but I
No,
mean,
you were.
there's that minor fear in the back of your head. And it was one of those things I'd never really looked into. As with most things that make me afraid, it's lack of knowledge. It's lack of understanding. So looking into it more, it's definitely put my mind at ease. um, and that's part of it. There isn't really a backstory, which is what makes him scary. All these stories are made up to feed off your fears. It's the unknown and the ability to feed your own fears because you don't know what his story is. And he's this entity and you see it and there's pictures of him, whatever, but it's whatever you're afraid of, that's what he can be. Which I think is part of what the madness aspect of it comes into it, just tormenting people with the madness and everything. And like I said, it's something for me, when it comes to scary movies, I'm not afraid of little children, old people, dolls. I'm more afraid of things that there aren't, things that aren't actually, I don't know, I don't know how to say not real. I don't know.
Would you say that when it comes to watching like a scary movie, you can compartmentalize it because it's an hour and a half long? When you're done, and you can go.
Oh no,
there's not
I sleep with I just have the light on for another week. Sleep with the light on for a week if I watch a scary movie that actually affects me. I can't fall asleep with the lights. I can't go to bed in the dark.
You sir are.
I don't watch scary movies. Let's put it that way. I didn't really grow up getting desensitized because I didn't watch scary movies growing up. I know a lot of my friends can watch scary movies and be fine. I remember me and another friend of mine went and saw Scary Movies to Tell in the Dark at the theater. And it was only two of us in there and we talked through the whole thing. But there were still a couple of things that were enough to bother me that I had to sleep with the light on. I'm a giant scaredy cat.
So why do you think, what's the difference between that and your fear of the Slenderman? Why do you think why do you think he made that this idea made you more fearful than watching,
just because I didn't know anything about him. I mean, if you just see pictures of him, it's creepy.
Yeah,
it's scary.
It's weird, but I totally get that.
He's meant to be a weird anomaly that is in existence, and yeah, it's just it's like I said, it's the unknown. I don't know. I didn't know much about him before this, so was that those underlying fears were there because I didn't have a backstory that went along with it. And that was the thing. Like, I would see a picture, I'd like, no, not gonna look into that. I'm good enough without knowing what's going on there. But in reality, by having just the images in my head and having no background knowledge of the image, it was just, yeah, it was that. And it wasn't really super scared thing. It was more just like I said, it was just that underlying thought in the back of the head, or possibly seeing him. And because I right outside my window, I leave my window open at night, and there's a tree line right outside my window. And I couldn't look out my window the last couple nights.
And that gives me the heebie. Like, I can really empathize with, like, because of the tendrils and the branches, and I can definitely appreciate that 100%. Last night, talking about fear of the unknown. Last night, it's maybe 2 a.m. I'm just quietly watching just Twitch on my television in the living room here. My bedroom door is shut. I keep the window open in my bedroom, and we live on the first floor of an apartment complex. I keep the bedroom window open when I'm home, just to pull fresh air through or whatever. Titus, the cat, my best friend, goes and he's looking out the sliding glass door between a couple of the blinds, and he's looking to the right and really looking intently at something. And on the right is where my bedroom window is. So I'm freaking, I'm sitting there and watching, what's he looking at? And then I put two and two together, wait, my bedroom's over there. We're on the first floor next to a pretty busy street. I don't know about this. This is kind of freaky. And I just, nutted up, for lack of better terms, and went to my bedroom. Got the gumption to open my door, checked just a dark bedroom, nothing in it. Went to my walk-in closet. I was too scared to open my walk-in closet all the way, so I looked through the hinge, that little space of where the hinges are, to see if there's anyone behind the door. There's nobody there. Like, all right, I'm fine. I'm just an idiot, and walked back in and sat down. But even that wasn't the end of it. I still,
and then you were murdered in your chair.
I was still a little freaked out. And when I did go to bed, I still went back and double checked everything again. But then I went to bed and slept for 6 hours, with an open window, and didn't think anything of it. So, because you never know, right? Because you never, the fear of the unknown. Kind of like if you're scared of deep water.
I'm not afraid of deep water. I'm afraid what's in the water.
Yes, because you don't know what's in there.
Exactly. What is it? 8% of the oceans has been explored.
Genuinely terrifying stuff. And if
City of Atlantis, and another civilization down there, probably.
I hope so.
8% of the ocean. One day they're going to take over. It's probably the Nazis in the middle of the earth that are
they left the moon,
just waiting to restart.
Brosidon resides, Lord of the Broshin.
But okay, the attack of Brosidon. All right. So
go ahead.
What? Go ahead. No, I was just thinking what we should.
Well, I want to talk about the Tupla effect. Is it Tupla or Tupla?
Let's go into the other stories.
Oh yeah, go for
it. So that happened with the two girls stabbing their.
By the way,
friend
the girl they
classmate.
stabbed lived. She's okay.
She's okay.
Really died. The other two girls are.
I thought it was one was doing 40 years and one was doing 20 years. Because I think only one of the girls actually stabbed her. The other one was just a witness. And I think the one that was the witness was actually the one that had schizophrenia, whose dad also had schizophrenia, but they never really talked about it with their daughter before because they hadn't really seen any signs that it was affecting her. So yeah, that was in 2014. And also in 2014, apparently young teenage girls were definitely into the Slenderman story. It was only 5 years after Slenderman had come into creation when the stabbings happened. And then also the same year, 2014, there was a 13-year-old girl in Cincinnati, Ohio, who wore a white mask, tried to stab her mother in the kitchen. The mother survived. She was stabbed, but the girl was also obsessed with Slenderman. She wrote Slenderman fan fiction and even created a whole world for Slenderman in Minecraft, where they showed.
I remember reading about that. I thought that was pretty bonkers. Well, and there's in Minecraft you can go to the Nether, so Minecraft is a video game. You can go to the Nether, which is like another world in Minecraft,
right? And
there are Slenderman-esque creatures in the Nether. There are these tall, thin, long arms and leg, all black creatures with white eyes that you have to fight, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Some people said they thought those creatures were based off the Slenderman. Mm-hmm. And also, a 14-year-old girl in Port Richey, Florida, sets a house on fire by soaking a towel in bleach and rum. She started by lighting the garage on fire and ended up spreading to the house. Again, she claimed it was because Slenderman told her to. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think at 13 or 14 what I was into.
Definitely, yeah. I thought the same thing. At 13 or 14, I was into just, I don't know, what you would classically consider normal things, right? Sports, video games, friendship,
music,
riding my bike. I grew up at 14, I was living in Sheraton, Iowa, which is a really small town, and not a care in the world. I worked as a farmhand on a hog lot and spent my meager income on Snickers bars and soda and parts for my bike and stuff like that, or a BB gun, something cool. But never anything like this. But again, also, I mean, that would have been in like the mid 90s. That would have been like 97, 98 when I was 13, 14.
When it started? Or what are you talking about?
Like when I was 13 or 14, I was in the mid 90s. Compared to these kids being 13 or 14 now, it's just such a big difference as to how they grow up and the media that they consume.
Well, I mean, and it's just, from what I've noticed in the stories about them, it was they got free reign of the internet. Which, I mean, like, I think they had just, one of the two girls had got an iPad, and that's where she really started digging into Creepypasta and Slenderman's stories and stuff. And me, I mean, like, I mean, this is still relatively young in the internet, and I remember Creepypasta was a big part of that. It was just people being able to people who weren't famous being able to, like, publish stories and stuff. They put a story out there and anybody could read it. So you had all these stories and all these connections that people were just, like, especially young kids were getting into and reading. Just like the mom said, it's like, who doesn't like horror at that age? And it's just like, she's like, I grew up with it and turned out okay, but that was the thing. Like, it's just, I mean, it's just however you let it affect your mind, how separating reality from fiction. Like, I don't struggle with it, but I mean, I think I allow fiction to influence my mind more than it should, if that makes sense. But yeah, just like allowing these things that I know they're not real, but it's still something, a certain part of my brain tells me, well, maybe it could be real. I don't know. These are the things that.
That's kind of racing. But for a lot, I know that's kind of the fun of it. Like I grew up in a fundamental Christian background, and am still, a Christ follower, but am not nearly as fundamental as my mother was. But growing up with that background, getting into things like exorcisms or demonology and angels, and like looking up things having to do with the supernatural, the religious part of the supernatural stuff, always really got my gourd. Like, that was the thing. You could see me, like, while kids would spend hours looking at Slenderman stuff, I would spend hours reading about demonology and not thinking, like, wanting them to be real or anything like that, but then definitely affecting my reality by, spending all this time reading these things and learning new things and stuff. It really freaks you out sometimes.
Right. Read the book of Revelation. See how that affects you as a kid.
That book of Revelation, well, see, and that was another thing. When I was 13 or 14, that's what I was doing. I was reading the book of Revelation 1,800 times in a row. Like, I would finish it, and that was the coolest scary movie I ever read. And, like, finishing that thing and going back and reading it all over again, and then all the associated books that I could find about it and stuff. Stuff was cray-cray. Right.
And for anyone who doesn't know, I grew up, I still am a pastor's son, and I definitely had, I was definitely rooted in the Bible and everything else, and it's just like, if you want to talk a horror story, if you want to talk scary, read the book of Revelation. That's gonna, I don't know, like, and watching.
Read it literally.
What were the.
Like, go through and read it literally.
They had, yeah. But it's and you go back and forth with people saying, no, this is literally how it's going to happen. This is just a representation of something. This beast represents these certain countries, or this and this and this. And it's just like, as a kid growing up reading this is real. This is everything, like everything in here. This is the real representation of what it is. And then you've got movies like Thief in the Night, which was one that was made in the 70s. And there's just these that are going through the whole tribulation and everything, and it's just like, I think for me, part of my fears came from like having me believe that was completely real. Like, it wasn't symbolism. It was like, this is what it is, this is what it is. And I have a history with being afraid.
Yeah, you're right. Like, I remember growing up, I was, and we'll talk about when I was 16, 17 years old in a whole other time.
That's a whole episode.
We can talk about that a whole other, that's whoo child. But yeah, like sometimes you take that stuff very, very literally. When everyone around you takes it literally, you were forced to take it literally.
Right.
And if you don't, they make sure you take it literally, and they don't stop until you agree. And it can be really, 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 really terrifying sometimes. Well, Aaron, we've reached our halfway point, so we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. And we're back. Welcome back, Aaron.
I mean, we never really left. I'm going to be honest with you. I thought about taking a bathroom break, but it's like, no, I'm in this now. I've got the headphones on. Oh. We're all mic'd up. Let's just keep this rolling.
So let's talk about the effect.
The tulpa effect.
The effect.
So the tulpa effect is something I came across in a bunch of YouTube videos, actually, where a lot of people believe that Slenderman has been brought into actual existence, even though he was a made-up, non-existent character or creature. He's been brought into existence using the tulpa effect.
So now he's basically been conjured.
Conjured, exactly.
So this effect it's a concept. It's based in, from when I read, Buddhism, mysticism, generally speaking, paranormal, and it's actually creating imaginary, quote unquote, entities by, spiritual. Would you say just by meditation and just like severely thinking about them, right, Aaron?
It's well, I mean, it's a mixture. It's a mixture of spiritual or mental powers.
So they do like mantras and they talk to it.
In Buddhism,
that's what
they
until eventually it pops up.
Tibetan Buddhism, that's what they use meditation to bring it about. There's other ways. There's like I said, spiritual mental powers. Some people used magic to bring out these creatures. Or
it's like creating your own imaginary friend.
It is, in a way. Well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a friend. It's just an entity. You create this, you bring this entity into existence.
That's even scarier. Yeah, because they don't have to be your friend. It could just be something has been made. Did you know when I was a little kid, I had an imaginary friend?
There's not a doubt in my mind.
Seriously.
I know. I'm serious as well. I have no doubt that you had an imaginary friend.
We grew up on a farm, and when we were on the farm, I don't remember having an imaginary friend. Until one day on Facebook, my brothers reminded me of it. But when I was a kid, we grew up on a farm that used to be a chinchilla farm, and genuinely scary and horrifying place. The basement was gross and black and dank and had stacks and stacks and stacks of chinchilla cages that were empty. The man that lived there before us had committed suicide, and we were able to rent the house very, very cheap. And while living there, I guess had an imaginary friend, and it was super creepy. And yeah, but so I can I don't have any personal stories about having an imaginary friend, how it came to be, what he apparently was like, what his name was, anything like that. But he ain't around anymore. But yeah, super. So yeah, hearing about this effect really freaked me out.
Right. So what I gathered from deep research on Wikipedia, it was adapted by 20th century Theosophists from Tibetan Sprolpa, which means emanciation or manifestation. Modern practitioners use the term to refer to a type of willed imaginary friend, which practitioners consider to be sentient and relatively autonomous. Spiritualist Alexandra David Neal claimed to have observed these mystical practices in 20th century Tibet. She described tulpas as magic formations generated by a powerful concentration of thought. David Neal believed that tulpas could develop a mind of its own. Once the tulpa is endowed with enough vitality to be capable of playing the part of a real being, it tends to free itself from its maker's control. This, say Tibetan occultist, happens nearly mechanically, just as the child, when his body is completed and able to live apart, leaves its mother's womb. She claimed to have created such a tulpa in the image of a jolly friar tuck-like monk, which later developed a life of its own and had to be destroyed. David Neal raised the possibility that her experience was illusionary. I may have created my own hallucination, though she claimed that others could see the thought forms that she had created. Tulpas in modern... So it's a thought form is another term for a tulpa. And thought form, I think that's more the more modern, what they call it. What do you call it, like in like Skyrim, when you conjure a wolf to follow you or whatever?
Conjuration.
What are they called?
It's called
but what are they called? There's a name for them. A friendly or a familiar?
No,
like
Atronach?
A familiar. You can conjure familiar. You can conjure an Atronach too, but like that's more what I like what makes me think of when I read stuff like this, like conjuring.
I immediately went to Skyrim as well.
I think that's where they come in with the thought of Slenderman being a tulpa, is something people have thought about him enough and used enough mental powers to bring him into existence. And then on his own, he evolved to what he needed to be, and then now has his own ability to do whatever he wants. Which is, that's one line of thought.
Yeah, that's obviously a very extreme line of thinking that they thought this thing into actual reality. But when you think of some of the other things out there in the world that we believe and think of, it doesn't make it as far-fetched as you would imagine. We got a lot of energy in us, so like if you want to take a supernatural thought process on that, it's pretty jarring, to say the least. But they call the people that do this, they call them tuplemancers, or that's what they call themselves. Mm-hmm. And there are entire websites devoted. I did a little bit of a deep dive into these places where there's people just working on magic, for lack of a better term, in the attempts to bringing entities into existence and testing it and trying it out. It boggles me that somebody would actually want to actually try, because the people that believe this, like, they believe it wholeheartedly and understand that if they conjure somebody, it stays with them forever. And there's a lot of religious implications when it comes to this as well. In Christianity, there are familiar spirits that are devils that stay with you, and there's a lot of things in the Bible and in other religious texts about, everybody's heard the term "we are legion" when Christ cast a bunch of demons out of a man into a pack of pigs, and then the pack of pigs jumped off the edge of a cliff. And so there's a lot of parallels to this in pop culture and in just general beliefs forever, I guess you could say. Aaron, you ever seen the television show Happy?
Yeah.
There, Tupla.
Yeah, it's a imaginary friend.
It's an imaginary friend who then
transfer
who is imaginary for Happy's imaginary friend for a little girl, who then gets in trouble. So the imaginary friend finds her dad, and so now they share an imaginary friend, and hilarity extreme violence.
He's just he's a wacky unicorn. That's what he is.
He's a wacky unicorn. What a wacky guy!
He's the kind of Tupla you want to have.
Yeah.
I mean, like some people just want a friend, you know.
Some people just want.
So they just they Tupla up. Or Tulpa. Oh, I keep saying Tupla. Tulpa up.
They belong to primarily urban, middle class, Euro-American adolescents, young adult demographics. They cite we quote, cite loneliness and social anxiety for an incentive to pick up the practice. 93.7% of respondents expressed that their involvement with the creation of tulpas made their condition better. So they do this out of...
That's the My Little Pony section of it.
Huh?
That's just the My Little Pony section of it. There's still actual, like, Tibetan Buddhism that use tulpas. It's that those facts are about a small group of My Little Pony fan group from Reddit that are tulpamancers.
Freaking bronies. Bunch of creeps.
So there's this group that offers support for other tulpamancers, and it was based off of My Little Pony fans that were one to bring characters into reality. So they tulpamanced, and that's what he was, the Euro-American adolescent young adult demographic, middle class. And it's for the majority of them, it just made them feel better. I mean, and if you're not hurting anybody,
appreciate wanting to feel better, like, and wanting to be less lonely.
Right? You're not hurting anybody. Do what you want to do.
Yeah, you do you, boo boo.
And I was doing some so, in essence, with this thought process, by making this podcast, we are making the Slenderman more real. If we go with the tulpa effect. But you're in luck, I also did some research on how to kill a tulpa.
Oh, yeah.
Which, overall, the majority didn't really give examples how to kill a tulpa.
Probably because they want to keep their tulpas that they spend all this time making.
There was a ton of them. That was the thing. Like, the Reddits I was going through was people asking, how do I kill my tulpa?
Jesus.
Because I
made a mistake.
I made a terrible, terrible mistake. And
I tricked my brain into making sure something is real. How do I fix that?
Typical American. How do I fix it? Let's kill it. So, most of them, it was... most of the articles said the best way to get rid of a tulpa was to just ignore it. And eventually it'll leave on its own.
Kind of like friendship.
I guess so. I don't know. I try to ignore my friends and they keep calling me back. Thank you, isolation. So yeah, there was a couple things. One was, and this was about just me researching through like 5 or 6 different Reddit posts on how to kill it. It was ignore it. B, you could kill it. You could use acid. You could stab it. And this is once it's taken on its own like its own physical form. And you can burn it, then bury it, and throw a portion of the dirt into space.
How do you throw... Aaron, I have a question.
Ask the Reddit guy. That was his answer, how to do it.
I love that.
All those were by him. He tried acid, it returned. He stabbed it, it returned. And then he burned it, buried it, and threw a chunk of the dirt into space. I want you to know everything you read on the internet is true. Just before we go any further, if you need information, go to the internet.
That's the best part
everything
of this, though,
you will
right?
find there
because this
true.
Is created in its modern form, was created by the internet. And so that's where you have to go. You have to go to Reddit because
you have to go to the source.
Just so happens to be the #1 resource on this effect.
Exactly.
It's
I mean,
bonkers.
you don't go into ancient texts or anything. Don't.
Yeah, I don't think there's a Dead Sea
Don't read the
Scroll
Tibetan Book of the Dead or anything.
Yeah.
Go to Reddit.
There's no Necronomicon referring to how to get rid of a pony.
And that was and C, the third option was the thought form itself would post on Reddit explaining that it couldn't be killed. So, I mean, they've gained awareness. They know how to use the internet. So
yeah, they made a Gmail account.
I think your best idea is going to be not to form one.
Or maybe it's just a kid pretending to be his tulpa.
No, that's not the case.
Again,
everything on the internet is real.
Yeah, people don't lie.
Tulpas don't lie.
The concept of people lying has always been a really foreign concept for me. Like when I watch like Live PD or like Cops or something, and the guy gets pulled over, and he's like, "Nah, it's my friend's car. Just let me borrow it." Oh, that's his weed in the glove box. It's not my weed. I'm always like, I always take the side of the criminal. Like, he's got an honest face. Like, I mean, that's a really good excuse. People borrow friends' cars all the time. He said it wasn't his weed. That makes I hook, line, and sinker. I always believe the criminal every single time.
I'm gonna be honest. Every time I was asked if it was my weed, and I said it was somebody else's, it was somebody else's.
God bless you, Aaron.
I don't.
So, I think that kind of tears it for the Slender and the Tupla effect. Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah. If you're afraid of something, look into it.
Yeah.
Unless it's sharks. Because if you're afraid of sharks, and then you just try and watch everything on Shark Week, it's just going to make you more afraid of sharks.
Yeah, how'd that go for you, Forney?
Not well. We had it on at the bar the entire week, and I didn't when it was Shark Week, and it didn't make me feel any less afraid of sharks.
Did you sleep with the light on?
No, I don't sleep with the light on. I don't close my eyes in the shower with sharks.
Got it. Okay.
Different, because you get that feeling of the water just rushing over, and you're surrounded by water, and you're in a small container, and then the shark just comes out of the deep blue sea at you, and can't stop that.
We really shouldn't talk about this on the podcast because people are going to abuse you.
I don't care. I mean,
real friends don't.
At least I know they're real.
Yeah, that's true.
And I know they actually do attack, and people do die from shark attacks.
Aaron doesn't even. There's certain video games Aaron refuses to play because there's too much water in it.
It's true. I couldn't finish some missions on. What was it? Far Cry 4, because you had to go into the water, and there are very angry piranhas in the water.
It's true.
If you want more info on Slenderman, in the case of the two girls in Wisconsin, be sure to check out Beware the Slenderman, the HBO documentary, which is where we got a lot of our information from on this. It was mainly that, some YouTube videos, and Wikipedia. But yeah, the Beware the Slenderman is available on YouTube to watch for free. You can rent it on Amazon or something, where it's where I first looked. But if you go to YouTube, it's on there for free. So Beware the Slenderman. All right. Let's give a little. Anything else you got on the slim, the skinny man?
Skinny fella. No, not really. No. He's freaky. If I hope this was. I hope this was entertaining for you guys to listen to. Our goal with this podcast is to kind of gain fresh perspective from a technological point of view and from an internet age point of view. And yeah, super neato.
Educational and informational. If this podcast was a video, we'd have a little EI in the bottom right corner of the screen.
E-I-E-I-O.
So yeah, go ahead.
EI. Like from the PBS. I'm picking up what you're putting down, brother.
I'm catching up.
Sorry, I love you.
Just a little recap of what we've got going on over this last couple weeks. Anything you're watching or anything good on your watch list, or any movies?
Oh yeah. Watching not so I watch a startling amount of Twitch. Twitch.tv, for those who are the uninitiated, is a place you go to watch people play video games. People think that's dumb. I think you're dumb for thinking that's dumb. So there. People watch sports. I watch people play video games. So I've been watching a startling amount of that. Pretty good storylines. I watch Grand Theft Auto roleplay. That takes the most, like a lot of my, whenever I'm watching television, it usually has to revolve around there. Other than that, Vikings, the TV series, the last season has been released on Amazon, season 6. So I'm 4 episodes into season 6 of Vikings. Going to finish that. And then at night I'm going through and watching, you remember MASH with Alan Alda?
I do remember MASH.
I'm going through watching that. I have a special place in my heart for MASH. Mm-hmm. When I ran away, basically. When I moved in with my dad, back when I was 16 or 17, I that first summer I lived here. I didn't have any friends, and spent every night or every day at home just watching television. And MASH was on FX, and they'd play 5 episodes every single day. And I got obsessed with the television show. And I'm going back through watching them all over again. And it's super fun to do and watch them again, reminisce. So I do that at night before I go to bed. It's pretty cool.
It's a great show. I used to love to watch reruns.
Corporal Radar O'Reilly is a hoot and a half, I tell you what. But you, Mr. Forney, you watching some cool things these days?
I'm watching all the hip things.
All the hip things?
The top of the line hip shows you should be watching.
Mm-hmm.
In the last 2 weeks, I have watched all of Afterlife with Ricky Gervais, which is a phenomenal show about a guy that loses his wife, and he is trying to just figure out how to live. It is sad. It is funny. It is good. I definitely recommend checking that out.
That's on Amazon Prime, right?
That is on Netflix. I also on Netflix I watched Extraction. If you're looking for a movie to just numb the senses for a while, watch some high-paced action with Thor running around with a gun.
Yeah, extraordinary amounts of obscene violence in that movie. Like John Wick, military version of John Wick, basically. I'm not a huge action film guy, but yeah, it was good. It fed the need for the time. I try to. My friends know I'm not much of the action movies for the most part, but if they recommend something, I try and check it out and see how it is, and yeah, it's worth a watch if you're into it. It's on Netflix. Like if you don't have a
Netflix, yes, Netflix again. Also watched Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia, which is on Hulu, which was pretty cool. I have been sober for over 3 years. No drugs, no alcohol, none of the biz. But this guy, it was interesting to see because a lot of times, if I did drugs, I wanted to see the effect of the drug. If I wanted to escape, I used alcohol. I knew how to use alcohol. But drugs was, I wanted to know what they did, what the effect of it was. I wanted to experience it for myself. And yeah, it was something like I don't consider myself ever to be an addict as far as it comes to drugs, just because I didn't use them in that manner, and I didn't use them a lot. Usually, if I found a way, if I got to experience the experience, I was good. But he goes through and tries out all these different hallucinogenics. And he goes around the world, travels around the world, and meets people that are using them for spiritual experiences, something to enhance their spiritual connection.
Like ayahuasca or something.
Ayahuasca, there's a ton. He uses a bunch of different ones, but it's cool. It's interesting seeing how all these different religious sects use certain drugs to enhance their connection to everything, like to experience life more fully. I guess to experience it, to feel life. I guess I don't know. Either way, that's on Hulu. Yeah, it's on Hulu. Definitely recommend checking that out. Got around.
Hulu's a great place to get, like, they have like First, they have a lot of stuff from like First We Feast and Vice. And
yeah,
such.
it is a Vice show. The Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia is a Vice show. So, I also watched Game Changers for the first time. It's a couple years old. As an interesting documentary showing how the plant-based diet affects athletes and their recovery time and their performance and everything else. It's directed by Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jackie Chan, which is, I didn't realize Jackie Chan I knew Schwarzenegger had something to do with it, but I didn't know Jackie Chan was involved with it. But yeah, it's actually pretty cool, giving you a more scientific view of how a plant-based diet affects athletes. My favorite thing I've watched in the last 2 weeks was The Midnight Gospel. I've worked my way through the entire series. It's on Netflix. Game Changers is on Netflix too. But The Midnight Gospel is on Netflix as well. It's done by Duncan Trussell. Has his own podcast. I think it's called the Duncan Trussell Family Hour.
He is a delight. He's on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast a lot as well.
Mm-hmm. I came across him via the Tinfoil Hat podcast. He was on there recently doing a talk with Sam Tripoli. And I'd watched one episode, but wasn't actually watching. And then I listened to the podcast.
And then I talked to you about it too.
And Sean Patrick had mentioned it, asked me if I'd watch it. And so I sat down and actually watched it. And it's actually, it's very cool. Again, Duncan Trussell is somebody who has used hallucinogenics as part of his
spiritual journey.
His journey. Figuring out life, I guess. So it's super trippy animation. And just really good talks. A lot to do with acceptance of death. Figuring out how to accept death properly. Which makes life a lot easier when you accept death. Accept that it's a part of it. But yeah, I know Dr. Drew's the first episode. Trudy Goodman, who runs Insight LA Meditation Center, is on one of the episodes, which is a really good episode. All of them are interesting. Cool interviews, fun animation. He said he wanted to make it where it was either one you could just listen in and gain some information, or just zone out and watch some trippy animation.
Some crazy
both
animations.
works great.
Those is super colorful, really funny.
Mm-hmm.
Super it's so the lead up to the plot of the animation, and then they're having a talk while zombies are attacking the White House or something like that. It is just bonkers. It's really cool.
It is the Bezonkers.
The bees knees.
So what are you listening to anything currently? Anything? Any podcasts? Any music? What's streaming?
A couple of things. The For the Likes of You is a metalcore band. They just released a new single that's heavy AF. So I've been having that on heavy repeat whenever I want to listen to something heavy. And then I really, really, really am into Christian hip hop. And there's a band called Social Club Misfits that one of the it's a pair of people, and one of them just released a new single over a lo-fi beat. And so I'm really getting into lo-fi stuff more and more and more. Podcast wise, I'm catching up on the Bill Burt podcast, which is Burt Kreischer and Bill Burr, two of my top 5 favorite comedians ever. have their own podcast on the All Things Comedy Network that Bill owns. So listening to that, I listen to podcasts at night. Just before I go to bed is when I listen to the most podcasts. So, but listen to that every single night. Just lay there in the dark, listen to the podcast, have a good laugh. Make sure I'm in a really, really good mood before I go to sleep. I haven't done any audiobooks, but I am reading. I'm reading a book that my brother Mikey has been pestering me about forever, called Pendulum. It's a crazy book. It's a nonfiction, and it has to do with how social trends shift from generation to generation, basically. I'm in sales. I'm a inside sales trainer, so it has a lot to help with that. And then just how culture affects generations after generation after generation, how baby boomers affected Gen Xers, how Gen Xers affect millennials, how boomers have affected millennials, how the pre-boomer generation has affected millennials, and then the most recent groups that are being born now. It's understanding why we treat each other the way we do. It's insightful for sure. It goes over about 3,000 years of ideas and how things are going. It's written by Roy Williams and Michael Drew. It's badass.
You're a badass.
But Aaron, you listening to any audiobooks there, bud?
Yeah, I listened to. I was plowing through a bunch of books there for a short time, and in the last 2 weeks I've only done one. I did Ready Player One, which is a fun book if you're into video games and 80s pop culture. It's a book based off of, again, virtual reality. It's set in the future, and everybody is on the Oasis, which is basically a virtual reality world that's set up that everyone can connect to as long as they've got the headset and everything. Kids go to school in the Oasis, and it's just a alternate virtual world you can live in. And the creator of it dies, and they have to figure out. He leaves some clues behind, and people have to figure out how to beat the clues. And when they do, they get the Oasis and all rights to it. And it's a fun little venture book. Just kind of got that 80s kids trying to figure out how to save the world type feel to it. But yeah, if you're in 80s pop culture and video games, check it out. There's also a movie. The movie was good.
Movie was really good.
The book definitely goes more into depth with everything involved with that was in the movie. So, but I mean, it was like a 18-hour book or something. So I mean, it's
say that last part again. How was the movie compared to the book?
I mean, it's got a lot more in depth, and it's been a while since I watched the movie, but I feel like they definitely took some liberties with the movie. It wasn't quite as set up as the book was, which I mean
to make it easier to digest and stuff. Like just
I mean, like I said, it was like a 16 or 18-hour book, so trying to squeeze everything into a 2-hour movie, it's kind of hard. But yeah, it was good. Check it out. Again, I use the Libby app, which is a free app. You don't have to pay for anything. You just have to have a membership to your local public library. You download the app, you log in with your library card ID. You can check out books, just like you would check out normally in the library. You get to keep them for 21 days. You can place holds if it's not available yet. They don't have everything, but they do have a lot of things. There's only been like 3 or 4 books that I've wanted that they didn't have available at all.
Do you wanna say the name of the
Libby, Libby, the Libby app. As far as music, The Strokes actually just released an album on the 10th of last month.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, so there is a Strokes album, which has been getting decent play. It's definitely I mean, they kind of progressed with their music, how they changed up their style and stuff. I mean, it was definitely a guitar-heavy band in the original when they first released their first couple albums. Now there's a little more electronic to it, which it's still good. Check it out. It's called The New Abnormal. Phoebe Bridgers. She's got a nice soft feel to her. She's been playing through the speakers quite a bit lately. I've been trying to, after I realized last week or the last podcast that I haven't been listening to much music. I've been trying to integrate more music into my life. I've got some new plants. I hear plants like music, so I try to keep them happy as well. Give them sunlight, give them music.
It's very nice of you.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, those two have been the top plays. As far as podcast, once again, kind of straying away from the music, so I was trying to get more into that. The No Dogs in Space podcast. It's one of the guys it's Marcus Parks from Last Podcast on the Left. It's him and his wife that do music-based podcast. Right now they've got a series on the Ramones that I'm working through. They're on the 4th part of that series. The first one I listened to was on Sid and Nancy. This is just some fun punk rock history. They've got a bunch of episodes. Check them out. No Dogs in Space podcast. Besides that, I don't know. I haven't really been super into anything else listening wise. I think that's all I really got that's been going on lately. No new video games. Me and SP are going to be soon making the jump over to PC, so I'm sure we'll be talking more about that in coming episodes.
We're ascending.
We are ascending beyond the console-based platforms.
I think we're just starting to look what's going to look like and stuff as far as building a PC and kind of getting that done. So hopefully we'll have something up and running here fairly shortly and being able to get that all squared away.
I'm hoping within the next 2 months to have my PC built. So, thankfully, a friend of ours who has a great knowledge in PC and is being very helpful. It's also helping me build a bicycle. The man's a genius of building things. So, good people.
True.
Good people.
True.
Thanks, Jameson. I think that's probably a good part to close it out.
Doesn't it?
Oh, that about does it for you, buddy. All right, that's about all I've got for you.
It's a lot of
all the time I have for you today. I have had more than enough. All right, thanks for listening today. We are very grateful for everyone that listens and supports our podcast. We're popping up on more podcast platforms daily. I mean, this is only the 2nd episode, so we're getting there. We're growing. Thank you. If you can, please subscribe to us on whatever podcast app you use to listen to us. We'll be bringing you bi-weekly podcast. As always, you can listen to us at anchor.fm/WDTP. There's also a button to support this podcast monetarily. Any support is appreciated.
Also, a big thanks to Anchor for providing us with the platform to be able to make this podcast. Again, it's an easy site to use. If you're ever thinking about starting your own podcast, we highly encourage you to check out anchor.fm. And if you have any questions or comments, when it comes, reach out to us at anchor.fm/WDTP. Click on the message button below the podcast description. You can leave us a voice message, or you can message us on Instagram. We're on Instagram as WDTP Podcast. Feel free to give us a follow on there as well. We really appreciate it. Or you can email us at wedon'ttalkpolitics@gmail.com. Again, thanks again for listening. We really appreciate it. Say goodbye, Aaron.
Goodbye, Aaron. This was the worst episode yet.